Hey everybody, we are going to be going live soon here. Just hang out and relax and chillax and just participate in the chat room until we get started. We're just waiting for people to get in. Thank you. And if you haven't, please like the live stream and please share the live stream as well. Okay, my friends, should we get started? Dear monads, should we get the party rolling? Should we get the party rolling tonight? Let's get the party rolling. Let's get the party rolling tonight. Give me them demon horns. All right. Oh yeah. Give me them fucking demon horns. All right. Oh yeah. Give me them goddamn demon horns. Oh. All right. Oh yeah. Oh, look at it. Look at them demon horns right now. Alright. Oh yeah. Look at them demon horns we got right now. Alright. Oh yeah. Look at them demon horns right now. Oh. Ooh. Ow. Ow. Look at them demon horns right now. Oh. Ooh. Oh. Look at them demons right now. All right, let's go live. All right, 3, 2, and 1, and big face. And hello, everybody. Welcome to my show. I am Jan Erickson. This is my YouTube channel about Hyperianism and interstar actualization. Tonight, we are going to be talking about a very important topic. It's important because I relate to it very personally. And the thing that's happening right now is there's a lot of controversy surrounding non-binary people. And this isn't the first time, obviously. There's always been somewhat of a controversy about non-binary people. But I want to really dive deep into that controversy tonight. I am a non-binary person. And I feel like I'm stuck in a world where the majority of people are debating whether I exist or not. And that's very weird because I'm like, I'm here. Here I am. Anyways, but before we dive into that, let's say hello to the chat room. First off the bat, I see Angela. Thank you so much, Angela, for coming. Good to see you. I see it's your first time here. Welcome. I see Zero. Good to see you, Zero. We got our moderators. We got Mark. We got Cassie in here. Thank you so much. Mark and Cassie are a couple of our moderators. Thank you so much for coming here and offering your time to help keep the chat safe. And let's see, we got Cassidy, we got Hope, we got Lisa Grace, we got Renaissance Fairy, we got Claudia, and Heretical Response. Heretical Response, thank you so much for your tip. A Heretical Response tipped to Monday Monad, and I really appreciate that. Seriously, like that means a lot. If you all want to tip me, you can do so. It's pinned in the chat room at mindfulmonad.com. Tipping is not required, it's not necessary, but it's so helpful, and I really appreciate it. So if you can do it, that's great. And if you can't, don't worry. The thing that helps is like liking the live streams, sharing the live streams, and inviting your friends to watch the live streams really helps. that is just as important. So the only reason I make it very simple for the pinned post is like, please tip at Mindful Monad, is so that you can get the link right away. You can get access to the link, because if I spread that out a bit, it kind of cuts off. So Laura LaFleur, thank you so much for coming. Tyler, thank you so much for coming. Hope, I don't know if I mentioned to you, thank you so much for coming. Always good to see you, Hope. Perry, good to see you. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate that. Roberta, good to see you. Paul Cherry, good to see you. I am doing well, thank you. Yeah, doing well. And while I have your attention, just so you know, and I'll mention this several times throughout the stream, next Wednesday, I will not be here, but for happy reasons, because I'm just taking a little tiny camping trip, just a little camping trip. So I won't be here live streaming on Wednesday, but I will be here next Friday. So next Wednesday, no live stream. Don't worry, I'm just taking a break. I'm just taking a sabbatical, and I'm reconnecting with myself. I'm going camping out into the middle of the wilderness, and I'm going to hunt for green garnet and a certain formation of jade. So thank you. I will be doing that, and I will mention that several times throughout the stream, so hopefully people will get the thing. And I see truffles. Heretical's response said truffles. Why are we saying truffles? Truffles what? Like truffle chocolates? Or like truffle mushrooms? Thank you, Angela. I hope to have fun. Yeah. I just want to relax. It's been a little dramatic this month, in case you haven't noticed. It's been a little dramatic. Let's see. Did I miss anybody else? Let me scroll up. Scrolling. No, I don't think I missed anybody else. I see Velvet Tears. Velvet Tears, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate that. And Wallflower, thank you for coming. And Morg, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming, Morgan. And let's see. We're just gonna wait just a little bit for people to get in. Hope, did I say hi? No, I did. Okay, so please smash the like. Yes, what do we got? We got 32 likes. Oh, no, we don't. We got 31 people and only 20. Okay, so if you're in here, like the video. And if it's not working, like close the chat and like close the thing, come back into the thing and like the video, because sometimes there's weird glitches. But please help me out by liking the video, because that helps. I see like 30 or more in here. And look at the awesome Hyperion crew here today. Hyperianism is well live and alive. We are here, honeys. So yeah, the topic tonight is going to be about non-binary people, and I'm going to be reviewing with you, reacting to two specific pieces by binary trans people about the issue of non-binary trans. I am non-binary trans. I am trans-masculine, and I definitely have my personal explanation of why I am that. But I don't necessarily want to give that at this moment. I think in the future I will go into more detail about why I feel I am the way I am. But I don't feel like I need to convince anybody that I'm non-binary right now, because I've been an open non-binary person for almost 2 years. There are 4 months left of this year. At the end of this year, I will hit my 2-year mark. So I feel like I'm almost there. So I am Claudia. No, I have not yet. It has not popped up, but it should soon. Claudia, I will look out for that, but I thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that. So, anyways, I guess we should just go ahead and kind of start. So, if you're just joining, tonight is Worldview Wednesday. I want to dedicate tonight talking about non-binary issues. Because, like I said, I've been non-binary in public, like openly non-binary trans, for almost 2 years now. Obviously, I'm not like the person that's speaking on behalf of all non-binary trans people all over, or just non-binary people. But I feel like I have a voice. And when I first came out publicly as non-binary trans, I had a lot of feelings and emotions and thoughts of, like, should I start advocating for things right away? Should I start participating in the arguments or the political debates or the representation of such? Like, should I start diving into that right away? It does that win me the sort of sash of non-binary person, being somebody that's openly non-binary and participating in the arguments on behalf of non-binary people. That was a lot of pressure, and I can honestly say that I've done a lot of sitting down and just listening in the last 2 years. But because of recent issues, I feel it's time for me to speak out. And the recent issues that are taking place are certain legislative ideas being put into motion to where it really limits the health care that's provided to trans people, and not just non-binary trans people, but trans people across the board. And what's happening is there are some, not all, but some binary trans people. And what I mean by binary, it's like literal A to B, B to A trans people. It's like, it's man to woman, woman to man trans people. Some are saying the reason our trans care rights are being taken away is because of non-binary people, because non-binary people are blurring the lines and making it so that cis people distrust trans people less, and it's just making it harder overall. Oh, hi, Kim Drew. Hi, Kim Drew. Hi, Kim. Good to see you. Anyways, so this is really frustrating. Right off the bat, my first initial feeling as a non-binary trans person is like, I've done something wrong. Like, what did I do? Like, like I'm just trying to exist. I don't want to ruin anybody's rights. I'm not trying to erase women. I'm not trying to erase men. I'm not trying to erase binary trans people. Like, I'm not trying to do any of that. I'm literally trying to exist. So my first reaction is like, what did I do? I didn't do anything. I don't want to do anything to harm people like that. So it's really weird to have the blame shifted to non-binary trans people. because I feel like overall, the 1% of this world, the 1% rich elite, sort of cis Christian nationalist type of people, um, they hate all of us. They hate everybody. They hate everybody. Like, so it's a little weird for trans people to take their finger and point it inwards and blame other trans people for the issues that are going on. But I feel like that's what they want. It's what the rich elite wants. It wants infighting. It wants ideas, progressive ideas versus progressive ideas. So tonight we are going to watch two pieces. First, we're going to watch a piece by Kat Black, who is a open trans black woman. And then we're going to watch a second piece by Jessie Gender, which we've already watched pieces by Jessie Gender. So clap, clap, clap. I love Jessie Gender. So excited to watch Jessie Gender again about this issue. Kat Black is a new one I want to introduce. Kat Black is extremely insightful and intelligent. She is a lovely trans woman, and I love her takes on things. She has such a she's got such a rational view of things, and I want to say conservative, but not in the political way. I don't mean like she's conservative as like she's political. She's conservative in the sense that she's careful to articulate what she really means. That's what I mean. She doesn't like throw all of her thoughts and feelings out there. And when I watch her, I feel like I can almost see her thinking like, not just to like present things to how others want to hear it, but just like how to articulate what she's thinking in a way that makes like that's what she really means. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, she means what she says, but she's thinking about it, and I love that. So we're going to get started with that. And we're all still saying hello. So let's get started. Let's do it. Let's just get started. Stop the music. Okay. So, let's start with this.
Do wish that I really do wish that some trans people would frankly wake the fuck up and realize that yes, it's true what Piggy Taiwan says, that a lot of us have to live in this certain way, adhere to these certain standards in order to survive, but that is oppressive. It's oppressive to have to live in a way where you must adhere to these narrow standards.
So Cat Black videos always start with like a clip from the middle of the video to get you hooked in, and I love it already.
Standards, or else you're not going to get the access to the care that you need. So, Hunter Schafer is a trans woman who plays the role of Jules on Euphoria, and for that reason, a lot of people love her. And as you guys know, I did a review of Euphoria. I watched the entire first season within a day, and I had my
I've honestly never seen Euphoria. I have no idea.
Thoughts, especially about Jules' storyline and things like that. I enjoyed her immensely in the role, and unfortunately, she is in.
Have any of you seen this, Euphoria? I have no idea.
In some trouble right now because she liked a post that a lot of people are considering to be trans medicalists. So I wanted to read the post with you guys, respond, and just kind of like talk about it, open up a conversation about how we feel about this, because I have.
So it's not her that's making this actress. It's not her that's making this post. It's that she liked this post. She actually supported it.
I wouldn't say divided feelings, but I definitely have
Angela says, no, I never heard of it. Yeah, I never heard of it either. Velatier says, I've never seen it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's not. I don't know.
Complex and nuanced feelings, so I figured that I would try to open up the conversation by talking about this. This is the post that Hunter Schafer liked. It is posted by somebody named Piggy Taiwan.
So here is the post or the statement made by somebody who really is nailing down this controversy and is getting this conversation started. And it's really upsetting to me to listen to this. But honestly, listening, like, seeing this through Cat Black has really helped.
The post says, I hope all of the people, NBs, who fought for trans identities no longer being considered a medical condition that requires dysphoria are happy because you've won. The red states are beginning to agree with you. HRT and gender affirming surgery are no longer deemed medically necessary for adults in Florida, and it's not going to stop there. That means more trans people will have to pay for their transitions out of pocket, forcing more of us into sex work. Y'all just couldn't stand to let binary trans people be the voice of this community. You had to dismantle all the guidelines around being trans to fit your narrative so you could feel valid, and then you demonized trans people who challenged your ideas and called them true scum / trans medicalists.
So, within the non-binary umbrella, you can be trans. I'm trans. Some non-binary people would not consider themselves necessarily trans. And some non-binary people that do consider themselves trans don't feel the need to go through the process of having surgeries to alter their bodies, even though they don't necessarily care for the body they're in. So there's a really weird area where I feel binary trans people feel uncomfortable with. Because when you are a binary trans person, you're transitioning as either male, man, or woman. But when you're non-binary, you're not transitioning from one point to another. It's not like an A to B transition. It's something entirely different. So people who are binary trans are saying that non-binary people are threatening trans care because it's giving cis people the idea that physically are altering your body and other healthcare things like hormone treatment or surgeries, that they're not like necessary across the board, so they shouldn't be supported at, through insurance and things, which is just weird. And I feel like highlights how binary trans people feel sort of oppressed and just like almost enslaved by this binary gender world. Anyways, so when non-binary people encounter binary trans people who say you have to be A to B, B to A, or you're full of shit, and you have to have a dysphoria about your gender, or you have to be in the position where you're seeking surgical alterations to your body, Those kinds of people, non-binary people see these A to B trans people as quote unquote true scum. They're trans medicalists. They're trans people who say you can only be trans if you have a medical component to your personality and your life, and if a doctor tells you you're trans and diagnoses you with a trans, I don't know, issue, but it's not like a sickness. It's not a sickness. So, that's what strikes me as weird.
What you don't understand is that binary trans women and men don't have the luxury of playing around with what it means to be trans the same way you do. You challenge gender ideologies from the safety of a cis body that requires no medical treatment. We have to play the game and live by the guidelines that cis people have created for us, because that's how we survive. You're not helping. You're not dismantling the gender binary. You're not expanding the minds of cis people. You are making them hate us. For the last time, I'm begging non-binary people to take a seat and let binary trans people, and more specifically, Black trans women, be the voices of this community, because they are the ones at risk. Now, there's a lot.
Wow. Yeah, no, wow. It's like, hey, non-binary people, take a back seat. Shut the fuck up and let binary trans people do the speaking, and more specifically, Black trans women. Wow. Wow. So here's a Black trans woman. Here's what she has to say. And I have to, it's not like she's the speaker on behalf of all Black trans women, but I mean, it's like, here's what she has to say. Let's listen.
Lot to talk about. There's a lot of things in that. There's a lot. It's a lot. Okay. So I want to start out by saying, as I've said many times on this channel, I've been blogging about being transgender for over 15 years, right? I've been on YouTube as long as I have lived life as a trans person. And I will start by saying that it's true to some degree that the conversation has shifted, right? The conversation has certainly shifted in a way where it's a bit different now. When I was coming up, the people that you guys would now call non-binary, we would call genderqueer. And there was
genderqueer. Interesting.
Certainly conversations around people who identified outside of the gender binary. That's always been a thing. And there was always this rift between people who felt that way and people who were very binary trans identified. A lot of that relates to the fact that for years, transgender people had to assimilate into this very specific way of being transgender, have this very specific way of expressing their transness and experiencing dysphoria in order for them to gain access to hormones. And
that's the problem. Before now, in order to get care for being trans, to get health care for being trans, you really had to meet a specific kind of medical requirements specified by cis people. And one of those major things was like gender dysphoria. So it's like, I feel like binary trans people really are sort of guarded about this fact. And what's sad to me as a non-binary trans person is like, I don't ever have any feelings of disrespecting that. I think that's great. I think that's like the forefathers and the groundwork of medical care being available to me today. So it never crossed my mind to be like, oh, fuck binary trans people. They haven't done anything, like they're all just full of crap. It's like, I want them to root for me, but this doesn't make sense for them to be like, just shut up.
Ever since I have been having these conversations, there have been people who would identify themselves as transsexuals, which they see as a more serious, more committed version of a trans person, and people who identify out of the binary. That's always been a clash. But the big difference between now and then is that those conversations are now a bit more of our public discourse. We're having more public conversations about being transgender now than we did 15 years ago, because we now have representation, and we've got Pose, we've got people on RuPaul's Drag Race, we've got a lot of different trans people in the spotlight right now, and so there are more conversations being had about being transgender, and as a response to that, people have fought against transgender people being able to have upward mobility. And so I want to start out by admitting and acknowledging that, yeah, the conversation has certainly changed. But here's where this Piggy Taiwan person is very wrong. At the end of the day, when we're complaining about a transgender woman no longer gaining access to insurance coverage for her medically necessary trans-related treatments for gender dysphoria, non-binary people are not the reason why red states are fighting against that. Non-binary people are not the reason why people are deciding to move against transgender people. What you might be led to believe, if your conversations are very limited within this kind of true scum transmedicalist thing, where you think that, oh, they're embarrassing us, these people over here who say that they don't need dysphoria, they're embarrassing us. But the reality of it is that they hate all of us. So this is the part that gets...
Oh my god. Oh my god. Like, that's the biggest faux pas. That's the biggest, like, bullshittery. That's the biggest, like, thing of this all. People who are voting against trans care don't give a shit about the difference between binary and non-binary trans people. They don't give a flying fuck. They don't give a fucking flying rat's ass about the difference between non-binary and binary trans people at all. The only people that are having the conversation about the difference between binary and non-binary trans people are trans people. And the whole, like, they're voting against our rights to trans care is sailing over all of our heads, their heads, all of our heads, because they hate all of us. They hate all of us. We're all against their ideology, which is Christian nationalism.
It's me, right? In the same states where people are moving against transgender folks, which, side note, if you guys are not aware, months and months ago, we had a conversation about the Don't Say the Gay bill in Florida, which was also connected to a lot of other things that started as the whole what about the kids thing. We don't want kids to be able to be transitioning and things like that. We don't want kids to be able to have surgery and hormones and all this fear mongering around trans kids transitioning and things like that. And Florida, like a lot of other states, has moved to criminalize, in some cases, treatment of transgender children. In Florida, at least, that conversation has shifted from we don't want kids to be able to gain access to care to we don't want adults to gain access to care. So what they're fighting against right now is insurance companies basically covering trans care. And the way that this is going to...
Yeah. This is all about insurance companies. This is all about capitalism. What are the companies covering? How much money are we spending on this? They don't actually give a shit about trans issues. That's not what this is about. And that's why it pisses me off when binary trans people start blaming non-binary trans people for this, because it's like you're missing the point about them hating all of us. They hate all of us. All of us. They hate us. They don't give a shit. The only reason they tolerate binary trans people is because it kind of meets their requirements. But that's the point. The point is their requirements are fucked. And nobody should have to meet any requirements to get the individual care that they need.
And actually end up turning out is that less people are going to be able to have their care covered by insurance, which means that there's going to be more people who can't afford very low cost transition things. And that's the issue. It's expanded from what about the kids to basically trying to make it so that no one can transition medically. And the thing, I'm giggling because, look, this is going to sound really harsh, but I think you have to be really disconnected from reality to think that the Republicans who sit around and want to fight against the most idealized transsexual are also going to be the people who look at you, the idealized transsexual, and say, oh, you're one of the good ones. You get to have.
Yeah. Yeah. Why are trans people interfighting about the good trans, the passable trans, the idolized trans, the trans that is accepted in this binary world, the trans that's accepted into the cis Christian nationalist world? It's not happening. I'm sorry. This world wasn't designed for us.
Have access to hormones. You're one of the good ones. You did everything correctly. No. These people who are fighting against treatment for transgender people generally are terrified of the idea of a transgender person transitioning young, being able to assimilate into their gender, being able to be who they are and grow up to be the gender that they are. They're fighting against that. They're trying to make that less of a thing. So they're not going to be connected to the conversation enough to hear that you did all the things correctly, you transitioned the right way, you said all the right.
So Andy says there's plenty of money for everyone to get care. We have to focus on the elites who don't pay their share. That's not true. I mean, I see what you're saying, but that's not true. It really isn't. There is plenty of money, but it's not there. There is in theory, but it's not there. They're not paying their dues. I mean, I see what you're saying. I'm not saying you're wrong. I see what you're saying. You're saying there should be plenty of money for people. There should be plenty of money. So there is money out there. There's plenty of money out there to take care of people, but there's not, because they won't pay their share. They won't. Yeah, you're right. But that's not reality. They just won't. They just won't. Yes, Athon. Thank you. Hello, Athon. And hello, Andy. Thank you. I'm not saying you're wrong. Sorry. I think that came off like weird. Andy, I'm not saying you're wrong. Like, you're beautiful, darling. Like, thank you for coming. Like, that was a beautiful point. I'm just like, but there's not. Like, there's not money there. There should be, and there theoretically is, but there's not. But anyways, okay, so Athon says, at this point, it's a blatant lack of common sense, basic respect, and common decency. Exactly. There are so many broader identities to help us unite and come together and really take over the rich elite and end this tyranny. The problem is the constant attack on secondary, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th identities. At the very basis, we're monads. Okay, I'm a monad. And then, in a human body, so I'm a monad in a human body. I'm a monad in a human body with certain genitalia. I'm a monad in a body with certain genitalia that's living in a world who says I have to behave a certain way according to my genitalia. And I'm trying to say, no, I shouldn't behave a certain way according to my genitalia. So it builds and it builds and it builds. It's like we have our basic identity as monads, and then it's like you stack on top like all the extra like individual stuff. Being Hyperion and being hyper aware and using the perspectives that we teach about, this is all what helps you have a good solid grounding in basis to like handle all of this. It's like you as a Hyperion, as a hyper aware entity, as a monad, as a higher self, you are the commander of all these different facets of yourself. You can have many facets of yourself, like a diamond. You know how a diamond has many different faces and sides, even though it's all the same thing? That's like kind of how we are as monads. Like we're a monad, and then we have this identity, and this identity, and this identity. And then it gets into this weird debate in the holos of like what identity is correct and which one isn't. And that's where this is dizzying. This is where it sickens me. It's like we really need to focus, people, because there are a certain percent of people in charge of the world that are fucking shit up for everybody. The rich elite, the people in power. And it's like we have to rise up against that, perhaps as something unified, perhaps as like working class or this, that, or the other. But you have to do it in the right way, in a way that promotes individuality, in a way that unites individuals together, in a way that's teleological in the end, that brings everybody to the same goal. You cannot just focus on the very individual stacked identities, because you're just gonna fail there.
Right? Like, they don't care about that shit because they hate all of us. And I want for this to really sink in. They don't.
And since we're in the battle of identities, conservative people, rich elite people in the top, hate trans people of all kinds. They hate all of us. They don't give a shit whether it's non-binary trans or binary trans. They're not having that conversation at all. They just hate all of us. They hate us all. They don't give a shit. They don't give a shit.
They don't want us to be here. These people who are making these laws are not making these laws because they heard a non-binary person say that they don't need hormones or that they need dysphoria to be transgendered. They don't fuck with any of us. Something else that I wanted to mention is I kind of felt like the mention of supporting the voices of Black transgender women who are binary to be kind of trite, honestly, because, you know, this is just my observation. I'm not really, you know, speaking from facts or anything, but the vast majority of trans medicalists I've known have not been Black.
I really enjoy
you know,
your
a
videos.
lot of them,
I hope
like
that you
Miss
get
Piggy
this. Lol. I tipped $40 including this. Not sure if it went through.
Oh,
Please
thank you
let me
so
know.
much.
Hugging face. 2 hearts. Devilish face.
Yay.
Rose. Black heart.
Thank you so much, Claudia. I see your thing finally went through. Thank you so much. Oh, I love it. Thank you so much. That really didn't like, oh. Oh. I really appreciate it when people thank me for coming onto the live streams and stuff. You know, I'm not a superhero. I'm not like a savior. I'm not a special entity. Like, I'm just a regular monad like you. Like, I like to eat ice cream, and I make bad decisions sometimes, and I fuck up, and, you know, I'm just a regular monad like y'all. And I think that's what I love about Mindful Monad, is that, like, I'm making a point, like, we're all monads. Let's navigate this world together, because that's the point of coming together in a teleological sense. So, you know, I really appreciate tips. Tips definitely help. They really do. Tipping helps. But you don't have to do it. Like, I don't want people to feel like they have to tip and stuff. But, like, when they do, it really makes my day. And mostly the notes. It's the notes that come with it. Because when people take the time to tip, they write something very thoughtful, and it's like the intention behind it that makes me feel like I should keep going. And people who tell me, you know, in the chat room and stuff to keep going and share it, and especially like if you share the video and you tag me and you say like, hey, check out this person, like that makes me feel so good. Like I should keep going. So thank you. Yeah. Thank you, heretical response. Yeah, thank you, Claudia. Thank you so much. Thank you, Angela.
You're
I
the
appreciate
best.
that.
Thank you, Jan. Hugging face. Two
Oh,
hearts.
thank you
Devilish
so
face.
much. Stop it. Claudia. You're so great. Thank you so much. Anyways, let's continue.
I want, at least from what I can see, please correct me if I'm wrong, are white, right? And I don't see this overrepresentation of Black trans folks in those conversations at all. Probably because.
Okay, I'm gonna pee real quick. I'm sorry. I've been drinking a lot of water. I got all these fluids here. So, anyways, yeah, hold on. Watch this. I'm gonna pee. I'll be right back.
Because quite a few Black trans folks deal with poverty.
Wallflower, beer.
Right? On top of all the other shit that they deal with. And so even this idea of trans care being accessible to them is often very far-fetched, right? It's often not as accessible as it would be to a lot of people who have more resources and more access to medical transition, right? And so, yeah, I didn't really understand that particular point. I didn't understand why that was inserted. Probably because, yes, it is technically true that we should highlight and underline more Black trans voices. But, as a Black trans voice, as a trans woman who's been making content on here for as long as I've been making, I just want to say that my voice has almost never felt like it was important, right? Obviously, people, listen to me. I have a fairly large following, right? But for all the talk of we need to center Black trans voices, that really hasn't been my personal experience with these conversations, right? Should we center more Black trans voices? Yes. But will we often default to white trans folks? Yeah. That's been pretty much my experience, and I'm sure I'm not alone. And here's another layer of it as well. Non-binary has a lot of different types of people under it. Some non-binary people are people who don't experience dysphoria. Some of those people do very much exist. There are also quite a few non-binary people who very much do live with gender dysphoria.
Oh shit! Sorry. Sorry. Let me start over. Let me start over. Let me start over. So this is very interesting conversation about dysphoria as a non-binary person, because on the one hand, I definitely do experience dysphoria. On the other hand, um, if I was forced to live my life out in my female body, I guess I could survive. But I don't understand why I have to do that. I don't understand why, as a non binary person in a female body, why I have to present a certain way socially in society. I don't understand why that's necessary, why that's intrinsically necessary. So on the one hand, I really do experience dysphoria. It's like I don't, especially to go into detail, I guess, because every non-binary person is different. But like, for example, my breasts give me dysphoria. I do not like having boobs. I don't like having breasts, which is interesting because I like them on other people, on women or other non-binary people. I'm a pansexual. I don't necessarily have sexual attraction just to men or women. I have sexual attraction to pretty much anybody, um, or can. Not every. I'm not literally attracted to everybody, but like I can be attracted to anybody of any like identity. But I do not like having breasts. I am very excited for my top surgery that I am in the process of having. Like, legitimately, through healthcare, I am approved for top surgery through my insurance. And I'm extremely grateful for that. I have my consultation happening in May next year. It's a big process. You have to wait a very long time for these things. So I'm looking to have my breasts removed within the next year or two. So that's something that's very important. It's like, I mean, I guess I could live the rest of my life with breasts, but I don't understand why I have to do that. Like, why? For who? For what? I would be very much more comfortable having a more masculine chest, and that's where, as a non-binary person, I'm trans masculine. I'm trying to transition into something that's more masculine. Like, I don't fit in this body. It's not masculine enough.
Who very much do receive medical care to treat their gender dysphoria, who very much do need insurance coverage for their access to care. Those people are equally affected by these laws, okay? It's not, again, it's not like they're sitting back and being like, oh my gosh, you know what? We listened to the debate between non-binary folks and binary folks, and because the non-binary folks said that they don't need hormones, we're gonna make it so that none of y'all have hormones. That's delusional. And this is the sad thing. I get why this picky Taiwan person feels the way that they do. I've said it so many times, but I used to be, as an extension of my own desire to be stealth and to fade into the background, very much a person who felt this way, right?
Some trans people who are more binary trans operate as what's referred to as stealth. Like, they're able to either pass as the gender they are, that's counter to the body they're in, or they literally have no medical transition or anything. They just pretend to live their life. Like, for example, if a trans man said, you know, I am trans man, but I'm stealth and incognito, you might see them as a woman and they don't give a shit and they'll identify as woman, but secretly deep down inside they know and recognize they're trans.
And when you're in that headspace, you can really convince yourself that you're one of the good ones if you act a certain way, walk a certain way, talk a certain way. And your experience is often going to be that because you have assimilated, because you pass, people are more likely to treat you better. There is something to be said about how true it is that when a transgender person assimilates into their gender, that often does indeed mean they live a better quality of life. However, the idea that these people who are moving against your rights are only doing so because a non-binary person decided that they didn't need dysphoria is just not being realistic. I'm not going to mention names. I'm not going to get too specific. One of the sad things that I've seen with some of this transmedicalist shit is that you see in some situations that these trans women end up putting themselves in positions where they're faced with the right-leaning people who fucking hate them. Yeah, these right-leaning people will be there to support you when you're saying all this sort of shit, when you're using your platform to lambast and disrespect other transgender people. However, they don't fuck with you at all. There's a very popular transmedicalist, I'm not gonna name, who I remember they did a live stream. They were on this panel and there was this conservative woman on the panel. And this transmedicalist trans woman was talking about how she agrees that kids shouldn't gain access to hormones and die and blah, 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 yada, 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 yada. And then this conservative woman pulled back and said, if you agree with that, the best thing you can do is grow your beard out and start acting like a man, because that's what you are. You guys who believe that these people are on your side because you did everything correctly, because you agree, because you went through the whole process, you're...
Kimju asks, a transmedicalist, what is that? So a transmedicalist is somebody who is like a binary trans person who is A to B, B to A. So it's very vehemently trans man, trans woman, very distinctly. It's a trans man or trans woman who takes their finger and points it at non-binary trans people and says, you are not trans because you don't experience dysphoria about your body, and 2, you're not actually getting hormonal treatment or surgery. So it's transmedicalist as like, if you're not actually diagnosed as trans by a doctor, then you're not actually trans. If you're not undergoing surgery or hormonal treatment, then you're not actually trans. It's this medicalist, it's like at the medical level, that some trans people are like, no, you have to be this or you're not trans. And that's the area where trans people are against other trans people.
Not functioning in reality. You're not functioning in reality.
No, Mark, yes. Mark is like trans literalists, yes. So it's trans people who are like, you either have to go from man to woman, woman to man, and you have to do your best to fit into this binary gender norm, because if you don't, then you're not actually trans, you're just some weird-ass person ruining society for everybody.
There are definitely some people who do see you as a more genuine version of a trans person because you did everything correctly. But at the end of the day, the kind of people who want to make it so that a trans person can't transition young enough to be able to experience their life in a certain way, to be able to be the idealized transsexual, these people are not going to be on your side in any way.
No.
You're targeting the wrong people by saying that non-binary people are to blame for this, by saying that non-binary people are the reason why you no longer have the access to hormones that you need. That's just not true. That's just not accurate. That's just not being reasonable or realistic. You just trying to attack somebody who also needs this, in a lot of situations, the same care as you do. It feels good to lambast and to dismiss and to attack other people when you're down.
This is the same exact concept of leftists on leftist bullshit. Leftists will attack other leftists first before they actually work on attacking the systems they're against. Why? Because they feel powerless, because they don't know what they're doing, they can't change the world, so they're going to take their finger and point it at other people in their group who aren't doing enough or doing what they think should be done. It's the same thing between trans people, binary trans people, non-binary trans people. It's like, you're not truly trans enough, and it's like, well, what is that? And it splits. Mark, yes, exactly, purity tests. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time.
But I do think it's important to recognize that even in the false scenario where a cis person turns to a binary person and a non-binary person and hears the debate amongst each other and decides, based on what the non-binary person says, that transgender people in general should no longer have access to hormones, the person who has power in that situation is not the non-binary person. Even in that false...
Thank you. I do not, as a non-binary trans person, I am not the one in power over this legislative anti-trans stuff. I'm not the one in power here. I'm the wrong person to be mad at.
False scenario where we're using a person who doesn't experience dysphoria to determine whether or not any transgender people get to have access to care. The non-binary person isn't the person in power there. The cis person is. And I really do wish that some trans people would frankly wake the fuck up and realize that yes, it's true what Piggy Taiwan says, that a lot of us have to live in this certain way, adhere to these certain standards in order to survive, but that is oppressive.
Mm-hmm.
That is oppressive,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's oppressive.
It's oppressive when you can't live like you are. It's oppressive when someone's like, hey, oh, you can be what you want. You can live out your delusional fantasy in this little, like, encampment and group over here. Like, that's oppressive, you son of a bitch. It's oppressive.
To have to live in a way where you must adhere to these narrow standards or else you're not going to get the access to the care that you need. And the thing about it is, when you really look into the kind of questions that people used to ask people in order to get them to qualify for hormones, were really fucking bad, you guys. Like, one of the questions people would often get asked is what about their sexuality. And if you were a transgender woman who, for example, was attracted to women, right? If you were a transgender woman who was anything other than this idealized image of a heterosexual woman, right? They could use that as a reason to not give you hormones. And what I hate about this is, as trans folks, we often do have an understanding of ourselves in a way that cis people just won't. But the reality of it is, cis people hold the power. Cis people have the ability to decide whether or not we have the access to care that we need. And that's fucked up, you guys.
Yeah.
That is fucked up.
Yeah.
So why...
I am not in control of the legislative. I, as a non-binary trans person, am not in control. The cis white man is in control.
Accept it? Why embrace it? Why even allow for cis people to have that much power over you? We can't allow it, they do. But at the end of the day, you're attacking the wrong person. You're attacking the wrong people. And a lot of times when I hear a lot of this shit, it really does make me feel a bit like this is a position, and this might be really condescending and wrong, of a person who just needs to grow a little bit. Because oftentimes stuff like this comes from a perspective of scarcity. There's only so many hormones to go around, so the people who have it have to be this and that. But like, at the end of the day, we should not be in the situation that we're in where we have to measure sex work in order to gain access to hormones. The system that we're trying to...
That's the weird thing. That's the weird statement by this person. Not Cat Black, but the person who made the statement that we're talking about says, like, it's if there's no insurance coverage for trans care, it's going to force trans people into sex work, which is so ridiculous. Why sex work? Why? Like, it's not going to force you into working at Target or anything like that. Like, sex work, really? If you don't want to do sex work, don't do sex work. If you want to do sex work, do it. Love it. Thrive in it. Like, it's like, don't pull sex work into this, okay? It's sacred.
Work within the system that the idealized transsexual is trying to work within is oppressive. And anything, in my view, that breaks that system down a little bit is better for all of us.
Yes, Athon, thank you. I cannot control my avatar's enforced body parts. Okay? I was born in a female body. I don't want boobs. I am not a woman. I love women. They should get to be women. Like, I don't care about erasing women. Like, I don't know.
Transgender women should not have to consider sex work because they have to gain access to hormones. Transgender women shouldn't have to sit there and have to qualify speaking to someone over and over, a cis person over and over again, before that person agrees that they are actually trans and should be able to live their life. I just want for people to think about this a little bit more. I think that people really just need to process this a bit more. You're attacking the wrong person. This is a misdirection. Like, to me, it's funny that this Piggy Taiwan person thinks that these Republicans are sitting around like questioning the validity of non-binary identity. I'm sorry, they're not even talking about that. I promise you.
Nope.
Like, they're probably not even aware of that. They don't
Nope.
care about that. As deep as it goes is they don't want trans people to exist because they fucking disrupt their idealized vision of society. They disrupt their idea that everyone should be the gender that they were assigned at birth and adhere very neatly to these very narrow roles based on that identity, based on that designation. That's why they want to fuck this shit up. That's why they want to make it so that less people are able to physically transition. It's not because they're sitting there and considering the nuance of gender discussion. No, they think both you, the idealized transsexual, and the non-binary person who's gender non-conforming are freaks, weirdos, people who shouldn't be able to exist or be seen at all. And I think the sooner people recognize that, the sooner that we can all come together and work towards removing ourselves from the standards that are oppressive towards us.
Because ultimately, we should not be having the conversation about who is more trans, who is truer trans than the other. That is the wrong conversation. And trans people, non-binary trans people, and binary trans people, all trans people need to come together and realize that these people hate all of us. So we need to stop the bullshit against each other. Okay, we're going to move on to Jessie Gender here. I love Jessie Gender. Let's do it. Let's see.
Hello, interwebs. I hope you're all doing well. So, for today's video, I wanted to do a discussion surrounding a recent discourse and controversy that transgender activist and actor Hunter Schafer, who is creepily hanging out over my shoulder here, has found herself embroiled in surrounding her potential transmedicalist views, as well as how those views connect with recent attacks on transgender rights, and specifically attacks on access to trans-affirming healthcare throughout the United States. Now, for those of you out there who don't know what a transmedicalist is, don't worry, I will go over that viewpoint and explanate it. Explanate it?
Yeah, we're going to explanate it. I love Jessie.
Explain it, I'm good with words, in just a little bit. But I actually wanted to discuss this controversy overall, not for the Hunter Schafer of it all, but because I think this controversy actually provides us a really nice starting place to enter into this larger conversation about how we view trans people, the problem with a transmedicalist viewpoint, how transmedicalists often misunderstand what logic guides attacks on trans rights from right-wing groups, and other people's misunderstandings of the reasoning behind those attacks as well, and then how all of this leads to trans community infighting, and then how that infighting ultimately only benefits those who are attacking trans rights in the first place, and not transmedicalists or all trans people in any way, shape, or form. So basically, while I am going to be talking about Hunter Schafer specifically, I'm ultimately less interested in her and more on the larger discussion at play here. And so as a result, this video is going to be kind of just more of a discussion and just me sitting and talking to all of you about all this. It's not going to be one of my more over-the-top, like, big cosplay videos that I've been doing, like the one I did recently on.
I originally wanted to cover Matt Walsh today, but I had to, intervene with this. But I really do want to cover Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh is a special person.
On Matt Walsh. By the way, I will talk about my Matt Walsh video if all of you are curious about that. My next part is coming, and it is a very big one, and I am doing a lot of big stuff for it. So we'll talk about that, and I'll share an update about that at the end of this video. But for now, this is just going to be kind of a casual conversation about these issues, because I just want to have a more laid-back talk with everyone about it. And also, I'm releasing this video this week instead of part 2 of my analysis on the politics of the Amazon Prime TV show The Boys, because I'm currently dealing with some problems with YouTube censoring and blocking and demonetizing that video, so don't worry, it'll be coming out next week at some point, and my patrons will be able to have access to the video early because they don't have to worry about YouTube nonsense. But for now, you'll just have to wait, and you get this video in the meantime. So let's start the conversation. For those of you who don't know who Hunter Schafer is, she is a 23-year-old transgender actor and activist who's garnered a lot of praise for her activism in recent years for the trans community. She's been featured in Teen Vogue.
Hey, MC Heavyset, good to see you. Oh my god, I'm sorry, my chair is really squeaky, I don't care.
She was even in Time magazine as a top 100 emerging leader, and she's started to garner even more mainstream attention for her role in HBO's Euphoria, where she plays a trans character there, as well as the fact that she'll probably be getting more attention for her upcoming role in the Hunger Games prequel movie. And so as a result, she's emerging as a, upcoming leader for many trans people, especially trans youth of her generation. And I just realized by saying that does that mean I'm an old trans person now? Like, I'm only 30. Are we still the same generation? Oh God.
I'm 35,
I'm old now.
I'm
So
here
that's
with you.
why people recently got upset when they...
I'm like 35. Okay, I can't tell you how many people are like, wow, you must be like in your 20s. It's like, no, honey, I'm 35. I'm 30. That's not old, obviously, but like, I got some years under my belt, okay? I got some years going on, okay? Am I 34? Cassie's like, you're 34. I'm 35. I'm close enough.
They discovered that she liked and then also left an ambiguous but seemingly positive...
And Claudia says, you look 25. Thank you, yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. I hope to look younger than I am.
comment on a post on Instagram that espoused trans medicalist views, leading many to assume, very understandably so, that the post aligned with Schafer's own views. To get to that, let's read the post, and again, to be clear, these aren't Hunter Schafer's own words, just ones that she seems to have endorsed.
I hope all of the people, NBs, who fought to have trans identities no longer considered a medical condition that requires dysphoria are happy because you've won. The red states are beginning to agree with you. HRT and gender-affirming surgeries are no longer deemed medically necessary for adults in Florida, and it's not going to stop there. That means more trans people will have to pay for their transitions out of pocket, forcing more of us into sex work. Y'all just couldn't stand to let binary trans people be the voice of this community. You had to dismantle all the guidelines around being trans to fit your narrative so you could feel valid, and then you demonized trans people who challenged your ideals and called them true scum/trans medicalists. What you don't understand is that binary trans women and men don't have the luxury of playing around with what it means to be trans the same way you do. You challenge gender ideologies from the safety of a cis body that requires no medical treatment. We have to play the game and live by the guidelines that cis people have created for us because that is how we survive. You're not helping, you're not dismantling the gender binary, you're not expanding the minds of cis people, you are making them hate us. For the last time, I am begging non-binary people to take a seat and let binary trans people, and more specifically black trans women, be the voices of this community because they are the ones at risk.
Yeah, and we just listened to the voice of a black trans woman who said that this is the wrong conversation. And I get that she's not like the token, black trans woman, but she made such a fucking brilliant point. Like, literally the point. This is the wrong conversation, honeys. They don't care about any of us. They think we're all freaks. All of us are freaks in their eyes. We're all degenerates. They don't care.
Okay, so lots to break down with this post, though I think I should note up front that the post does seem to have a lot of anger and vitriol within its words, especially towards non-binary people. And I
need pot. Who needs pot? I need pot. I need to get high. I don't know. Only because this is like, I'm getting a little riled up. I need to calm down. I need to get some pot. Hold on. Here, you watch this while I get some pot.
Get to later on where I think that anger and emotion is coming from.
And also, just on the surface, there's a lot of problems with the offensive way that this post has described people. Like, for example, saying that non-binary people are living in the safety of a cis body, which isn't the case because they're non-binary people, so their body inherently isn't cisgender, regardless of whether it's conforming to certain aspects of how we view gender and gender alignment. Their body is inherently not cis because they're not cis.
So already right off the top, we see that this post is being invalidating of people's identities and bodies and trying to define someone's bodies for them. But that's just the beginning of issues with this post. But we'll sort of save it because I want to start more just sort of on the surface with the logical arguments of what this post is arguing. Basically, this post has a transmedicalist point of view. The word transmedicalist, like the term TERF, is just a word that denotes this viewpoint, and I'm going to use it because it's the word that best explains what the viewpoint is. Though, as the post exemplifies, people who hold this view often push back against this word's use because it's a way to break down a viewpoint that is, as we'll talk about at its core, exclusionary and harmful. So? How is it exclusionary and harmful? Well, I've done longer videos breaking down transmedicalism, which I'll link up there, and I'll also direct you to Cops Hate Mo's great video breaking down transmedicalism specifically, and I'll link that in the description. But to oversimplify, transmedicalism is a belief that some form of physical and medical transition is required to be truly transgender. Transmedicalists believe that things like hormone replacement therapy or gender-affirming surgeries like vaginoplasty or breast augmentation for trans women or breast removal and phalloplasty for trans men and more beyond that are necessary. Now, there are gradations of transmedicalism. Some transmedicalists believe that you need to go through all of these procedures to be fully trans. Some say that you need just a few of them, and...
Let's see, who do we got? I just want to say... Katrina, hey Katrina, it says I just ate an edible. I don't do edibles. I don't know why, because I don't feel like I can do that. Angela says not into drugs, but to each their own. Thank you. Yeah, everybody has their own vices. Sometimes my vice is ice cream. I don't know. I think ice cream is a vice. Ugh. I love the conversation going on in chat. I love it when you all have deep conversations in chat. Comment what you will, but I do love it when there's this kind of conversation. Anyway, should we continue?
Some focus solely on just the genitalia surgeries as required to be fully trained.
Oh, caffeine. Ooh, that's tough. I've definitely had struggles with caffeine and having caffeine headaches, which really derail you. It sucks.
And so there's a lot of different variations of the viewpoint. But core to pretty much all of these beliefs is the belief that gender dysphoria is necessary and the cause of being transgender. Specifically, gender dysphoria relating to your body. Gender dysphoria itself is a sense of distress, anxiety, or depression caused by a mismatch of your gender identity, basically how you view your gender internally, versus either biological traits of your body and or how you're treated by people and society around you. Now, transmedicalists would argue that the treated by people and society part of that definition is actually not part of dysphoria, but only specifically in how dysphoria relates to the body. Basically, they believe that dysphoria is only about your biological traits in your body and how those are at odds with how you sort of wish your body to be, and the only way to treat those things are through medical intervention. Basically, to put simply, transmedicalists believe in the pathologization of transgender existence, that to be transgender inherently is a medical and specifically a mental health problem. It's all essentialized in bodily distress. So, why is this viewpoint an issue and making people upset that Hunter Schafer specifically might be espousing it?
I see, that's what's so hard, because I'm a non-binary trans person who definitely does experience dysphoria. However, I have to say, the euphoria is something that's really overlooked. Why is there no discussion about people having gender euphoria versus dysphoria? What if somebody within a specific gender feels extremely euphoric in themselves and just like totally elated, and just the idea for me personally to like express myself more masculine and have no breasts and more of a man chest, and just like have that and put myself out there and just, have the facial hair, because I've been on testosterone treatment. I've been on hormonal treatment for almost a full year now. And I love like the stubble and the chin hair that's coming in and all the extra body hair and the ass hair, mostly hair in my ass crack. I got extra ass crack hair. Just, and I don't cry as easily. I don't know. It's hard to cry, and I have extra ass crack hair, and I have zits all over my body. Okay, I'm getting manly. But like that, I love it. Like I love it. Like I'm happy this way. Like I'm euphoric this way, and it's a little weird to me to have somebody point their finger at me and be like, "You're wrong for that." Like fuck you. Like you disgusting piece of shit. Like, fuck you. It's like, what am I doing? I'm just enjoying my ass crack hair. Like, fucking leave me alone.
Well, before I break that down, let me start off by saying I myself am a trans person who had gender dysphoria.
Kim Drew's like, really about the crying? Yes. I don't like have a period anymore. My menstrual cycle is stopped. Like I don't have premenstrual syndrome. Like it's really hard to cry, so I either just shit or just punch a wall.
Specifically around my body, and I've actually sought medical intervention to alleviate it. I've personally been on hormones for close to a decade at this point. Again, I'm getting old, and I've had 3 gender-affirming surgeries, including one that I've had literally less than 3 months ago and that I'm still healing from. You can even still see kind of the gnarly scar on my forehead here. I don't know if it's on camera, but it's like right there. And I actually did a whole personal video on that surgery. If you're curious about it, it's actually a video I'm very, very proud of. But I say all of that to point out that if anyone was to be a trans medicalist, it would be me. That being said, though, I am not, because it is important to note that it is not necessary to have gender body.
Oh, Mark says, hot damn, I gotta tell you some stories of my late teens. Yes, please do. Please, because, it's so interesting. I've been asking my cis man and male friends, I'm asking them what it's like to go through puberty, because I'm going through second puberty. With the testosterone entering my body, I'm going through second puberty, and I'm going through this awkward teenage boy phase, and I do have moments where my voice cracks, and like my voice is lower. I noticed that my voice doesn't register on microphone as much as it does in real life, because like there's been a few people who I've like met in real life, and they're like, oh my god, your voice is different. But yeah, no, like I am going through like my awkward teenage boy phase. There's this thing, like I'm totally open about this, and if this grosses you out, I don't care, leave the room. So like even a part of having testosterone, I have what's known as bottom growth. So like literally like my clitoris grows into like a tiny penis. So like I have like a little penis, and it's really fun. And so like I'm doing extra like masturbatory like activities and things. I'm in my room a lot, I don't know, like I just like I have to like watch porno to get like an erection and all that shit. Like it's so funny. Like I love it. It's just, I don't know. It's great. It's great.
Body dysphoria, or any form of dysphoria, to be transgender. What being transgender is, again, oversimplifying here, is not identifying with your gender identity assigned at birth. Within the United States, where I'm from, and other similar Western cultures, we're all told at birth, based on if you were born with a penis or vagina, that we're either a boy or a girl. You have a
Cassie, it is really fun. I've got like a tiny dink. I call it my tiny dink. I have a little tiny dink. I do. Like a little tiny like weenie. It's awesome. I get like a raging like semi. Like I got like a hard nub. It's awesome. Like suck my tiny dink. I got a fucking tiny dink. Suck it.
Penis, you're told that you're a boy, and if you have a vagina, you're told that you're a girl. When you're told that you're a boy, there are certain social expectations placed upon you, either being emotionally stoic as a boy, you must wear boys' clothes, etc. Girls are told to be more emotional, but they can wear dresses and have makeup.
It is a new toy, right? Like, my roommate is like, what are you doing in your room? I'm like, nothing. Why is there all this fruit with holes in it? I'm like, I don't know, nothing. Get out.
and all that sort of stuff. But also, on top of that, all of us do have certain biological traits that we're born with. Whether it be having breasts, or a vagina, or a penis, or, a flat chest, or deeper voices, Adam's apples, those sort of things. And then there are things beyond that are just completely beyond biological factors. Like wearing dresses, for example. Like, there's no biology there. The girls aren't inherently, just born with dresses. And we can see that very clearly within other cultures, for example, where we see boys being considered manly if they did wear dresses or skirts. Like Scottish people wearing kilts, for example. And so it's important to note, as I'll talk about more in a second, that being transgender as a result of this does change.
I'm sorry, what? Can we just go back to this? Can we just go back to this? That is a fine specimen right there.
Where we see boys being considered manly if they did wear dresses or skirts.
Angela, Mini Jan, right? Check out Mini Jan, bitch.
Scottish people wearing kilts, for example. And so it's important to note, as I'll talk about more in a second, that being transgender as a result of this does change from cultural context. But the important thing to note is that we're all sort of told within our worldview today that a lot of these social expectations are natural extensions of these biological factors, that girls are naturally more emotional. But that's not inherently the case.
No, yes, no. Okay, so I feel bad because I mentioned that, I'm, less emotional because I'm on testosterone. It's not because men are inherently less emotional and women are more emotional. I don't mean, that's not what I mean. It genuinely has changed my bodily chemistry because without the testosterone, you know how some females, when they have their menstrual cycle and it's they have PMS, some women have PMS to just a very normal degree, a subtle degree. I am one of those people who is it's hysteric, the sky is falling, Chicken Little, everything is coming down, and then the moment I start my menstrual cycle, it feels better. But it's so much it's this weird, it's an actual term for women who are, anybody who has a menstrual cycle, premenstrual syndrome, but it's times 10. It really overhauls and derails you hormonally. So the testosterone legitimately balances me out and helps me with that. I feel so much better. So I joke. I make a lot of jokes with the testosterone. It's man juice. I'm less emotional. I have a penis. It's a lot of joking. I really do have a small wiener. But anyways.
Girls can be less.
Why do I have to keep reiterating that? Stop it, Jen.
Less emotional, boys can be more emotional. And yes, some of those things can be influenced by biological factors, like hormone levels and things like that. But there's no one right specific way that a girl or a boy has to be. But anyways, we're all told that we're supposed to fit into these categories from birth. But in reality, though, none of these things have to be aligned. So, being transgender, therefore, is just saying that you don't fit into those alignments that you're told to have.
Being transgender is realizing that you don't fit into the things that people are telling you you're supposed to have. I don't fit into man or woman. I've tried. When I was what was it? 18, no. 22? 21, 22, maybe 23. I went through a good long moment where I thought I was an actual like A to B trans man, like true blue, like I'm a man. And then I had moments where I'm like, maybe I'm bigender. Bigender being like I'm both man and woman, because there's so much about being a woman that I don't detest. I don't hate that. And that's what's so hard. It's like, if I decide to be more masculine, am I saying I hate being feminine? Because I don't. I don't. I don't hate being feminine. I don't hate being masculine. I love both. And I love whatever it is that's kind of beyond that. It's more than being both. It's being a synthesization of those into something else. And I don't feel like everybody should be that way. I think there's genuinely monads who are like, I'm a woman, I'm a man. Like, and I love that. I don't dislike that. I guess it just makes me sad that this has to be such a controversy when it could be so simple and benign.
And this can be done in a bunch of different ways. Certainly, transness can come from dysphoria, from feeling your body doesn't match, as it did for me. And that's not an ignorance of biology, by the way, but an understanding of our biology that we have from birth. It's actually a deep understanding of our own bodies and our relationship to it. And it's also realizing that we do have many medical technologies today that can help make our lives happier and healthier by using it to help change or manipulate our biological factors and features. And again, that's what happened to me. I chose hormones and a lot of different surgeries, but
Yeah, no, Katrina says, welcome to being fluid, Jen. Yeah, no, I agree. No,
Again,
that is fluid in a sense. Gender fluid is not the same as being non-binary. Gender fluid, I don't know if that's what you mean, but I will say gender fluid is somebody who is cis, but they can present themselves in between and they don't give a shit. For me, I am transmasculine. That's my like official. I am non-binary transmasculine. I'm a non-binary person. I don't fit into either man or woman, but I am transmasculine. I'm transitioning to be more masculine than my body originally presents, because that's what makes more sense to me. I'm a guy with pie. Guy with pie.
some trans people
Coming
want just
through.
hormones and no other surgery. Some people just want surgeries and no hormones. Again, it mixes, matches, and is different for every single person and what makes a single person happy and healthy. But being trans can also not require any medical intervention at all, but just wanting to appear or be treated a different way. It may just be wanting to wear makeup or wear dresses and even still be seen or called a boy. Or you can ask to be referred to by different pronouns or have a more feminine appearance. Or ask people to like just refer to you as a girl. It's all sort of different aspects of these things that we can all sort of present to make ourselves as individuals happy. And we all have the right to say about our bodies and how we're treated and being respected by other people. If you wouldn't disrespect someone's name, for example, by calling them a different name, like Bob, if they hate the word Bob and their name is Robert, then you shouldn't do the same for someone's pronouns.
If your cis friend is like, I don't want to be called by my first name, I want to be called by my middle name, like, you would do that, right? You wouldn't be an ass? I don't know. Don't dead name people. Do not dead name people. It's not cute. It's not funny. And it doesn't make you look good. It makes you look like an ass. Assholio.
Because pronouns are just as culturally made up and assigned to people as names are. And all of this can be done to alleviate gender dysphoria without requiring any medical treatments at all. And it should be noted that these people can still be binary in their presentations, aligned fully with being seen as a girl if they were told they were a boy at birth, and vice versa, but not wishing to seek any changes to their biology or medical aspects at all. Or they can also be seen as non-binary, seeking to present somewhere between masculine and femininity, or not on that spectrum at all,
Yep.
and just doing their own cool non-binary thing. But also, On top of all of that, dysphoria may not be required at all. Some people can have euphoria and feel really happy at just having their gender affirmed in different ways, whether
That's what was the main kicker for me. It wasn't so much that I had dysphoria presenting more feminine and as a woman. Like, it's like I don't hate women. I don't hate being feminine. I don't hate any of that. So it's like if I have to do that, like, fine. But the euphoria of being like, you could be trans masculine and just like more masculine, but still keep your femininity and have that other aspect of you too, and synthesize both of them and become like my true self. Like, that's what I'm like, yes, that's what I want. Like, that's what I want, and I can, and I am. And I explored my options for medical care, and I got it. I got my hormonal treatment, and I'm getting my top surgery here soon.
your medical stuff or cultural stuff or social stuff. Or it can just be a general indifference, being like, yeah,
Well, this is cool.
that's totally fine. And it's also important to note that you can do this within your own gender identity or without it.
Yeah, okay, so, like, let's say somebody is just like me and feels the same way, but they're like, you know what? I don't give a shit. I'm just gonna be really feminine and like a woman and present myself that way. Like, that's fine. You're still non-binary. It's like you're just like, I don't give a shit. This is fine. It's like, but then some
There are some
non-binary people are like, hey, I want the stuff. That's fine too. I want the stuff. I got the stuff. It's exciting. I just like, once I have that, and then this is the thing. For me in my life, my transitional journey with this, with changing my body and altering my body, it's very finite, right? It's gonna end. Like, it's like I do that, and then it's like, I got it, I'm done, and I'm moving on. It's not my whole fucking life, but I will always be open to that being a part of my life. Yeah, I'm not ashamed of it. I'm always gonna talk about it, but it's like, it's not my main identity. It's a very finite thing. That's the thing for a lot of trans people, binary and non-binary. It's like they do their transition stuff and then it's like over. Like, thank you, I'm done. Anyways.
People who are assigned female at birth, for example, who will want to present more masculinely and be considered a butch woman, but still wish to be seen as a woman, while someone may present exactly the same way, but say that they identify with being a boy. It's all individual and is specific to an individual person. So while we do have some sort of base definition of being trans, also being considered trans within your own personal experience is also a choice on how you perceive yourself. And on top of that, all of this can come coupled together with people seeking to transition socially and medically and picking and choosing which aspects of that they wish to do. I myself kind of fit in the middle of all of that, for example, because while I am a trans woman and I did seek to medically transition my body to present my body in ways that our culture understands as stereotypically more feminine or like female aligned, I actually present socially in a slightly less non-binary way. More feminine than most people, but not fully like over the top feminine, as you can kind of see my very presentation right now. Not to say that cisgender women can't present this way, but again, I sort of like kind of play in the middle of sort of feminine and masculinity, leaning a little bit more towards feminine. But the important thing overall, just for everyone to note here, is that being trans is just saying, hey, I don't fit into these gender boxes that I'm told to fit into from birth. I may fit into some of them, or I may fit into none of them, but just the act of not fitting into some of them and then sort of wishing to transition away from that or seeing yourself in a different gender identity from that as a result is being transgender. Which then brings us back to transmedicalism, because the issue with transmedicalism is that it views anyone who doesn't fit into a binary transgender experience, and importantly, those who don't seek to change their biological features to align with their gender identity, as valid. Not only that, many transmedicalists will say that not only are these experiences not valid, that they are just a fad, a recent social trend that like the kids are getting in on.
But with the definition of transgender being ever expanding and the rise of what we call transgenders, right? People who appropriate being trans for attention, you can...
This is a transgender woman, notorious. I forget her name. She's notoriously known for catering to right-wing bullshit. She's literally like it, just like, hey, I'm A to B. Like, I was born a man, but I'm a woman, and like, she literally like presented herself on Ben Shapiro's show to try to like tell Ben Shapiro that there are some trans people that are acceptable. This is the kind of bullshit here.
They don't exist. They do. They're obviously not as common as actual trans people, but they definitely exist.
And well, certainly, I'm sure there are kids that out there that experiment with considering themselves transgender at a young age. As kids, we're always exploring our identity, and we'll put on different hats to see if they fit, whether it be trans or whether it be a goth or whether it be like a, any sort of different identity. We're all sort of doing that as kids, trying to figure out ourselves. This is actually false overall, because while trans people who have felt body dysphoria have always existed, trans people who have just wished to transition socially have also always existed. In fact, one could argue that since our current medical treatments for dysphoria are a more recent development in sort of the history of humanity, there's more evidence for those who socially transitioned only throughout history. Not to say that people who did experience body dysphoria didn't exist throughout history, just that, honestly, there's probably more evidence of people who just socially transitioned, such as indigenous Two-Spirit folks or India's Haraja. Or we could even point to the fact that social understandings of what makes a man and a woman who have changed from culture to culture throughout time, with men even in Europe seen as manly for wearing makeup and wigs, for example, as evidence of the fact that, like, social factors around gender have actually been more fluid than necessarily biological ones throughout history. At least our access to change those things have been more fluid throughout history. On top of this, there's actually been recent studies that have shown that few transgender children change their minds after 5 years after coming out as transgender. So this idea that trans people are coming out as trans as just a fad and then will change their mind later on is less the case than people would think. But that actually even goes against my own personal experience, because my own sister actually came out as trans while she was still in high school and actually decided later on that she actually wasn't trans. And I think that that's perfectly okay. She didn't go on hormones, she didn't go on puberty blockers or anything like that, though she and my parents did at the time discuss possibly going on puberty blockers, which would have been perfectly fine according to our doctor, and she probably would have been okay and gone off them and been perfectly fine when she decided that she wasn't trans. But she did play with her identity, she did play with her pronouns, and ultimately liked the elements of self-discovery that she was able to uncover during that journey, and it also allowed her to know for certain that she actually wasn't trans. And it showcases how being able to play with one's identity in childhood is actually an important part of being able to figure out who you are actually. It's often when you don't allow kids any sort of experimentation or ability to figure out who they are at all that these sort of feelings get repressed and ultimately become a larger problem later in life. As transgender activist and writer Eli Ehrlich wrote, "Some cisgender people cling to the notion that they can change their children's identity, just wanting the best life for them. However, this typically causes intense trauma, distress that only started to get noticed from mainstream media with the death of Leila Elkhorn in 2014. Leila Elkhorn, for those of you who don't know, was a
This is sad.
transgender girl who died by suicide because she was traumatized in this way. Now, this view that trans medicalists have, that only people who are bodily dysphoric are actually trans, comes from the fact that until very recently, transness in our own culture today in the United States was only really understood through medicalization. A lot of our understanding surrounding trans people today comes from medical research from folks like Ray Blanchard, who...
See, that's the thing. That's the thing. Everybody's understanding of trans people and what they need medically has been first and foremost understood through doctors, through the medical system, never on a social level. We are living in a day and age where we are now discussing and looking at trans people on a social level. It's a very big, broad conversation that originally started through medicalization, and that's why there are some trans people who are like, hey, I was a part of this from the get-go, and this is how we originally did it, but that's changing now. I didn't get any sort of session with a therapist where they asked me if I was deeply uninterested in my body. What I got was very kind and receptive care about what do you need, and I told them what I needed, and they're like, okay. And I'm very lucky and I'm very lucky and fortunate to have that kind of care. Not everybody has that. I live in California. California is very receptive to non-binary trans people. Anyways.
Who's his own problematic figure within the trans community, and I've done a video on him, for example, who argued that transness required medical treatments in order to be considered trans. And a lot of that, too, also comes out of the fact that there was this sort of stigmatization of being trans, that it was seen as a mental illness, and therefore requiring medicalization. A similar thing happened with being homosexual throughout history as well, that homosexuality was also considered a mental illness, and therefore, was seen as sort of a medical problem.
Yeah, even homosexuality. No.
Rather than just...
I sound like I'm slurring. Oh my god. Homosexuality. Even that originally was seen as, a mental problem. So, I mean, here we are.
Just a thing that someone could be. But because of that, our society up until recently mainly only understood transness solely through medicalization. It's only started to become more mainstream and commonly understood that transness does not require medicalization. Some who wish to vilify this sort of understanding of what it means to be trans will sometimes point to researchers like John Money, who, again, is a very problematic figure within the transgender community and even outside of it for numerous horrible reasons, let's just be honest there. But the fact that John Money was absolutely terrible does not negate the fact that he is one of numerous researchers and scholars and doctors and therapists who have explored and come to this understanding of what it means to be trans and how to best help.
Being transgender no longer considered a mental illness, says the World Health Organization. Thank you. I do not have a mental illness. Thank you. I'm not mentally ill. I am just simply non-binary.
Transgender people. Though, if you're curious about my thoughts on John Money, don't worry, I'll be talking about it in a future video that I'm doing on Matt Walsh. Many trans people, up until now, were only told to see their transness through that medicalized...
Yeah, what was the date on that? Let's see.
That transness does not require medicalization. Some who wish to vilify this sort of understanding of what it means to be trans will sometimes point to researchers like John Money, who, again, is a very problematic figure within the transgender community and even outside of it for numerous horrible reasons, let's just be honest there. But the fact that John Money was absolutely terrible does not negate the fact that he is one of numerous researchers and scholars and doctors.
2019. May 30th, 2019.
Doctors and therapists who have explored and come to this understanding of what it means to be trans and how to best help transgender people. Though, if you're curious about my thoughts on John Money, don't worry, I'll be talking about it in a future video that I'm doing on Matt Walsh. Many trans people...
I want to do the Who Wants to See the Matt Walsh? Should we do Matt Walsh on Friday? Should we do the Matt Walsh video by Jessie Gender? Because, I'm dying at, I hope Jessie Gender, if she ever, sees this channel, I hope she's okay. Because, I just love her, and I just love the content. So, she's just so fucking intelligent. Do you want to do Matt Walsh and Jessie Gender's take on Matt Walsh, on Friday? Should we do that? I would love to do that. Yes. Claudia says yes. Zero says yes. Mark says yeah. Cassie says sure. Cassie, sure. I'm not making fun of you. I mean, I am, but I'm not. Me and Cassie go way back to, kindergarten. So me and Cassie give each other shit. On a deep fucking monadic level. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Were only told to see their transness through that medicalized lens, and many still to this day only see it that way. Even further, as I myself have discussed in videos about my own surgeries, even for those of us who do seek medical treatments or surgeries as part of our trans experience, our being trans isn't cured or fixed or done away with by these interventions. Instead, they are ways to help us along with our transitions in order to make us happier and live healthier lives.
Look, as a Hyperion, when I alter and change and surgically transition or, change my body, my avatar. Because I always say, like, we're monads, right? We're not our brains. We're not our bodies. But we are in our bodies. I mean, I'm not denying that. We are part of humanity. We are in human bodies. We're living human lives. Even though we say we're beyond human, we recognize we're here in our human lives. So it's not like changing my body is the sole, like, it's not the main key for me to live a productive life in this holos as a monad, as a Hyperion, trying to inspire humanity and help humanity reach the teleological end. But it helps. It's like, and that's the whole point about coming together and uniting together as one, but also as individuals. Like, you can have your individuality. It's not bad. But if somebody constantly targets you for your extra little individual bits, if somebody targets you for your individual bits, they're an asshole and they don't get it, and it's going right over their heads. Because we're first and foremost monads in the holos. That's the number one base that we are in our identities, is monad. We are all monads. Next, we are our own individual things.
They are not the end unto themselves. As Eli Ehrlich, who also had gender-affirming surgeries, said in her own writing, "It was not until after I had surgery and my doctor told me that my entire body looked better that I realized how this medicine can be exploitative of transgender people. I did not feel more whole or complete. Surgery did not have the power to confirm my gender. Medical professionals insinuated that my desirability and existence would not be validated until I fully transitioned. According to them, I would no longer feel trapped in the wrong body, which I never did feel in the first place. Instead, I simply felt satisfied that I was finally finished with such a large part of my own transition."
Yeah.
This feeling that Eli articulates speaks to, for those in the trans community like myself who do seek surgeries, sometimes feel that there is this sense and pressure from even trans healthcare providers that validation of our identity is only found through bodily changes or pathologization of our experience, instead of realizing that...
Yeah, exactly. I'm just trying to be more comfortable in my avatar. Just trying to be... I don't know. It's like, why do people... Like, it's like the same thing. It's like, you choose the car you want to drive, Why not have your ideal car? Like, why not?
These medical aspects and things that we can use are merely tools that can be provided along a trans person's journey to help us live.
Our avatars are literally meat cars. We are meat cars. We are little bags of meat. Like, we got mags. Like, we're not that, but, like, we're driving our meat cars. Our car's made of meat. We got meat. Put vitamins in your meat. Jesus Christ.
Happier, healthier lives by being able to choose how we control and dictate our bodies. And this is why many trans medicalists will see trans people who only wish to transition socially in some way, or non-binary people, as a recent fad. They've always existed, but weren't understood, focused on, or acknowledged at all, and therefore seen as not actually existing because they weren't seen.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you. Oh my God. Non-binary people have always existed. It's the same thing as left-handed people. Left-handed people suddenly took a rise at a certain point in human history, not because people suddenly became left-handed, but because the religious stigma dropped from people being left-handed, because the religious stigma said that if you're left-handed, then you're of the devil. You're like evil. That's like wicked. And then you have like a nun beating you with a ruler, making sure that you learn to write right-handed, even though people are genuinely left-handed when they write. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's like people have always been non-binary. There's always been non-binary people. There's just a rise in acknowledgement and awareness. The end. The end.
They were made invisible. Buck Angel, for example, is a prominent trans man from an older generation than myself who argues that way, and is a very terribly problematic figure that, again, I spoke about in that video I linked to before. So we can already see why there's a divide on where trans medicalists sit when it comes to understanding larger cultural context of being transgender versus non-binary people and other members of the trans community who are accepting of non-binary people and those who wish to not medically transition. But the reason that these views are a problem doesn't just come down to the fact that we're ideologically different, that it's just a difference of opinion, but the fact that these views can actually be used for harmful ends. And this person's post that Hunter Schafer liked illuminates why. There has been a large push recently by many right-wing and conservative groups to attack transgender rights around the United States. There's been, for example, attack on trans women's rights to be in sports, or all trans people's ability to enter the bathrooms that align with our gender identity, etc. But the biggest push recently has been to attack trans-affirming healthcare, especially for transgender youth under 18. Several states, especially right-leaning states like Florida, Texas, and Mississippi, have all passed or attempted to pass bills outlawing trans-affirming healthcare for youth and labeling it in some cases as child abuse. Beyond that,
That's fucked up. Labeling it as child abuse? That's fucked up. What business is it of yours?
Congresswoman, Christian nationalist, and all-around kind of horrible person Marjorie Taylor Greene has recently drafted a bill that would do the same nationwide.
Two horrible people. We got fucking Tucker Carlson, and fucking Marjorie Taylor Greene. Fucking fuck these people.
I'm one of the Americans that are sick and tired of our government allowing the abuse of the American people. But when it comes to gender-affirming care, which is really child abuse, this is actually an assault and it's child abuse.
So a lot of trans medical care rights are currently under attack, and it's absolutely horrific.
Yeah,
To know
it is.
that care that could help so many trans youth
Yes.
is not only being denied them, but being actively vilified to the point where
Think of the fucking children, people. Think of the fucking goddamn children.
trans kids' parents are being criminally charged, investigated, or vilified for trying to take care of their kid and help them live their best life is undeniably awful, cruel, and disgusting. However, trans medicalists, like the one that this post exemplifies, argue that the reason that this attack on trans-affirming healthcare is happening is that right-wing folks who are pushing these bills are doing so because they believe that transness doesn't require medicalization. Trans medicalists believe and are arguing that it's non-binary and binary trans people who don't seek medicalization, arguing that you don't need medical intervention to be trans, that these lawmakers are listening to, and ultimately then saying, oh, well, if, medicalization isn't needed to be trans, then we'll just vilify all transgender medical care.
What? What? So, because some trans people will not pursue the care, no trans people across the board should receive care. That's so fucked up. That's so fucked up. That's so fucked up.
And as a result, these trans medicalists are attacking and angry at binary and non-binary, non-medical seeking trans people as the problem. Yet, this belief fundamentally misunderstands where these attacks on trans rights are coming from. Right-wing politicians and pundits are not attacking trans healthcare because they are fighting for non-binary trans people or believe that transness doesn't require medicalization. Far from it. If you actually listen to the rhetoric that they're using, it's not just anti-medical treatment for trans people that they're arguing, but it's stemming from a vilification of all trans people overall.
But even so, American Academy of Pediatrics, that was their book promoting puberty blockers, chemical castration, sterilization for kids. Okay? And that's in terms of the medical community, that's as mainstream as you can possibly get.
Shut up,
And so
Matt.
when Rachel Levine claims, when he says that there's no argument that, you know, within the medical community, it is a shame and an outrage that is almost true. There are exceptions, but they are few and far between, which does not at all, even a little bit, serve to legitimize this kind of butchery that's done to children and the drugging of children. Doesn't serve to.
There's no butchery or drugging of children. That is such a far stretch. If you actually look at the trans care that minors are receiving, it's not what you think it is. Kids can't get surgeries. I mean, like, they can't. Like, what breasts are you going to remove for kids? Like, this, that, and the other. Like, nobody's doing that. There's, like, puberty blockers. That's it. And also, I want to make it very clear that cis people get gender-affirming surgeries and care. Men go on testosterone if they are deficient. Men also go on puberty blockers to stop the process of their hairline receding. Women get breast and chest augmentations to be more feminine. Men who are overweight and lose a lot of weight get chest augmentation to remove pretty much breasts. Like, I mean, like it's so weird to target trans people for specific care when these things are used across the board. And I can't remember what city or school district, but there is a recent case of 3 high school girls competing in a athletic competition, and, you know, first place, second place, third place winner girls, the second place and third place girls' families pressed for investigation into the girl that won first place to see if she was actually a trans girl, to see if maybe she actually had a penis and testosterone. Do you see how this weird phobia about trans people does not just affect trans people, it also discriminates women too? And the other thing too, interesting enough, one of my favorite non-binary people, Jeffrey
Did
Marsh.
you notice that Dave Chappelle never called himself a feminist until they attached trans exclusionary radical to the front of it?
Yeah, Zero. Yes, I did. I lost my thought. No, that was a good point. I lost my thought. Who was I talking about? What was I saying? I was talking about the girl. Oh, so a good non-binary person that I love, Jeffrey Marsh, pointed out that it's really interesting that women are so scared that trans women and trans people and non-binary people are going to, like, wipe them out and take them out, when we are literally like 2% of the human population, literally 2%. Why is 2% of the human population being put on blast right now? Why? Interesting. I know. No, Zero, you're fine. No, Zero, you're good. No, don't even. Maybe we should get started on Dave Chappelle. I wouldn't mind doing that. Dave Chappelle is a whole other thing. Oh my goodness. Like TERFs in general, like me and Susan covered TERFs when I guested on the Hyperion frequency. No, not Hyperion frequency. Hyperion frequency is good. But the Hyperion source. When I guested on that live, me and Susan talked about TERFs, trans, radical, or feminists. So basically, cis women who are feminists, they're very radical and they don't like trans women at all. Like, they don't consider them actual real women. Maybe we could cover more of that because, like, oh my goodness. There's so much. Anyways, let's continue. We gotta wrap this up. Also, I want, like, to eat food soon. Like, I want, like, I want a chicken pot pie, and I want, like, mashed potatoes. I want some, like, country food.
Legitimize it. What it does, unfortunately, is serve to further delegitimize the medical industry.
It's not that they're listening to non-binary trans people, but the fact that they're saying that non-binary trans people and trans people in general are a social contagion, causing children to seek medical interventions before they're ready or can consent to such things. That apparently we're handing out hormones like candy to kids who ultimately won't wish to transition, forcing them to have irreversible surgeries that they'll later regret.
But then the other thing that is scary about social media is social contagion of mental disorders. So we know we're aware now that certain proportion of young girls who are identifying as gender dysphoric.
On the surface level, this argumentation does brush up against the argument that I was alluding to earlier, that there is this pressure by some people to only see trans people who seek medical transitions as valid, and thereby there is this seeming pressure to get medical interventions in order to validate one's trans identity, a pressure which shouldn't exist. And if this was the argument that these right-wing folks were using, to a degree, I would actually agree with them. The argument is less to say that medical interventions are required to validate trans identities, as trans medicalists would argue, but instead to allow medical interventions like hormones, surgeries, and more to be seen as simply tools one can use as part of a trans person's experience, to be used or not used at one's discretion, and with time to consider them and their effects on you, both long-term and short-term. However, while surface-level right-wing arguments may seem to touch upon this, that's not actually the argument that they're making. But it's actually just dehumanizing trans people if you listen to the exact way they discuss these things.
Describe the fact that someone who was once a woman, and really still is, had her breasts cut off.
Do you know who I don't understand at all? The transgender ones. Because if you undergo a sex change operation, you are basically committing a crime of self-harm.
No.
Every surgery is a risk. And these transgender people, to me, are disgusting.
That's sad. This surgery is not self-harm. What difference does it make between somebody who is getting, like, trans-affirming care where they get their breasts removed or they get their genitals altered? What's the difference between that and, like, a woman getting breast implants or a breast reduction or a man getting testicle implants? Because they do that. Men do get, like, testicle like alterations and penis alterations and shit like that to be more manly. What's, like, is that self-harm? You know what fucking pisses me off? Ooh, Cassie, can you affirm this? In high school, I had this one math teacher. She was really fucking mean. She had a classroom that was on the second floor that kind of, like, oversaw the lunchroom in high school. I can't remember her name. She was really fucking mean. I remember I was just drawing on myself with a pen, like, on my arm and stuff. And she literally like came up and like hovered over me, and she was like, "You do realize that's self-harm, right? You need to stop this, or I will send you to the principal's office." Like, she was like really serious, and she even went as far as like, "I'm gonna tell your parents, and I'm gonna call the police if you keep harming yourself like that." For literally drawing on myself like with a pen or a marker, like I can't, like, it was so weird. Like, I'm just like, what? Like, I'm just literally just drawing on myself. Like, that's not self-harm, and that's what this reminds me of. Yeah, Cassie says, I don't remember her. I think my math teachers in high school were men. Yeah, she was. I don't remember. I'm sure we could like look it up, like the history of the high school and stuff like that. But like, Jesus Christ, she was so fucking mean. There was a lot of students that had a problem with her. But it reminds me of that, like this, like, oh, if you get like alterations to your body, like, but it's very specific. If it's like you're trying to be trans, like, that's disgusting. By the way, if you haven't liked the live stream, could you please like the live stream and share it? And also, I do have oh yeah, subscribe if you're new here. Oh shit. What did I do? Anyway, subscribe if you haven't. And then I do have a Patreon. If you join my Patreon, even at the lowest level, you get access to my Discord server. And please message me if you're having trouble getting access to it, because I can just send you the link. When you get access to the Discord server, you can talk to me like off hours and share links. I like it when people share links to stuff to review. That helps out a lot, because I don't know, I just love to just like review content about serious issues and then giving you the Hyperion take.
Yet this belief
and the drugging of children doesn't serve to legitimize it. What it does, unfortunately, is serve to further delegitimize the medical industry.
It's not that they're listening to non-binary trans people, but the fact that they're saying that non-binary trans people and trans people in general are a social contagion, causing children to seek medical interventions before they're ready or can consent to such things. That apparently we're handing out hormones like candy to kids who ultimately won't wish to transition, forcing them to have irreversible surgeries that they'll later regret.
But then the other thing that is scary about social media is social contagion of mental disorders. So we know we're aware now that certain proportion of young girls who are identifying as gender dysphoric.
On the surface level, this argumentation does brush up against the argument that I was alluding to earlier, that there is this pressure by some people to only see trans people who seek medical transitions as valid, and thereby there is this seeming pressure to get medical interventions in order to validate one's trans identity, a pressure which shouldn't exist. And if this was the argument that these right-wing folks were using, to a degree, I would actually agree with them. The argument is less to say that medical interventions are required to validate trans identities, as trans medicalists would argue, but instead to allow medical interventions like hormones, surgeries, and more to be seen as simply tools one can use as part of a trans person's experience, to be used or not used at one's discretion, and with time to consider them and their effects on you, both long-term and short-term. However, while surface-level right-wing arguments may seem to touch upon this, that's not actually the argument that they're making. But it's actually just dehumanizing trans people if you listen to the exact way they discuss these things.
Describe the fact that someone who was once a woman, and really still is, had her breasts cut off.
Do you know who I don't understand at all? The transgender ones.
To jsou ti transgender.
Because if you undergo a sex change operation, you are basically committing a crime of self-harm. Every surgery is a risk. And these transgender people, to me, are disgusting.
But you'll also hear them just generally call all trans people gross and disgusting. It all goes back to this sort of right-wing idea that there is a natural way for a man and woman to be. That it's either God-given or like biological traits that are innate in us that mean a man is this way and a woman is this way. It all comes from this argumentation, not that like medicalization isn't necessary to be trans, but that the whole aspect of being trans is itself a non-starter.
Those are Christian values, but that's also just reality. It's biblical values, male and female, he created him. But
yeah, Cassie nailed it right on the head. So like everybody who gets elective surgery is causing self-harm. And that's the thing. It's the debate, is this elective or non-elective? Like, but that should be between the individual and their insurance company. Like, this shouldn't be a social debate.
But that's also science and reality. All these things work together, as they so often do.
It all goes to conservative ideologies' focus on tradition and what feels right. And as a result, to them, to break out of these gendered roles that we are assigned at birth feels, quote-unquote, wrong based on how these gendered roles have been made pervasive and thus seemingly normal in our society, and they consider it ridiculous to question them on their face. What has existed for a long time must be inherently correct, at least as conservative thinking as a philosophical ideology goes. That trans people are medically ill for even thinking in the first place that, like, we can have access.
That's so weird because, like, when I grew up, my parents tried to get me dolls and doll houses and dresses and girly stuff. And some of it I genuinely did like. But I'm like looking at the brothers I had, and they had like the guns, the alien looking like water guns, or like the guns where when you press the trigger it like lit up and like made like laser sounds, like, or like all these cool ass toys. I don't know, it was so weird, that whole like beginning where it's like, what kind of toys do you like, what kind of things do you like? It's like, that's when kids start categorizing themselves or subcategorizing themselves into different sects of sex, as I mean like SECTS, like sex, like not like SEX. That's just the way I'm saying it. I don't know, but just like different sections of or like levels of either being a woman or a man. You notice how there's even lines blurred there, where it's like you can be a woman, you can be a man, but even within being a woman, you can be a more feminine woman or a more masculine woman. And even with being a man, you can be a more masculine man or a more feminine man. And then it's like when you get in between all of that, suddenly there's a problem. Very interesting, right?
To medical technology that exists, like right now, they'll say things like, oh, you think having a breast make you a woman? And the answer is no. We don't think that having breasts makes me a woman. I just think that having breasts make me personally happier, which is why I sought the medical interventions that we have to get them, and that thereby makes me happier, and also in a larger cultural context that might make me be more treated as a woman, which also aligns with how I like to be seen and treated and makes me happier as well, because we just like to be treated a certain way. On top of all...
And I like to be treated more masculinely. That's why I want to remove my breasts. It makes me more happier, and I think it's a very finite thing. I can just get that care, I can get them removed, and then it's done, and it's like, whoop, whoop, big whoop. But suddenly it's like a big debate. It's like, why? For what? Why? Because, like, women could get breast enlargement, and that's cool, but then, like, I get my breasts removed, and suddenly that's weird.
All of this, a lot of these right-wing arguments also ignore a lot of things about transgender healthcare in general, just completely misunderstanding what transgender healthcare is. I mean, first off, it also ignores that trans healthcare has been heavily gatekept throughout history, either financially, with a lot of trans healthcare being expensive or not covered by insurances, or through endless bureaucratic barriers. And again, these barriers don't exist because people believe that, oh, being transgender doesn't require medicalization, but just the fact that they think being trans, period, is itself a ridiculous notion. and therefore not even needing to be understood or medically treated, beyond simply saying like, oh, that person's mentally ill or crazy. On top of this too, this is also ignored how medicalizing and gatekeeping transgender healthcare overall has always disproportionately affected trans people from more marginalized communities or identities who already statistically face larger barriers to accessing any healthcare, regardless of if it's trans-affirming or not. Again, as Eli Ehrlich states, the medicalization of transness that created these conceptualizations will never represent the community as a whole. There is no universal trans experience or biological mechanism that causes transness. Medicalization will always disadvantage those experiencing intersecting oppressions, denying access to trans people of color, queer trans people, and trans people with mental illness. In terms of vilifying trans healthcare for trans youth specifically too, it even ignores that even if one can get past those barriers, that in most cases trans people who do get irreversible surgeries are typically 18 and older, or have had a long history of medical care and discussion from therapists, doctors, and affirming parents who make sure that when they choose to get these irreversible surgeries that it's the right choice for them. It also ignores that most under 18-year-olds getting trans affirming care are typically only being given puberty blockers.
Yeah, Mark says that science literacy has never been a right-wing strong point. It really hasn't.
If that at all, which are generally safe drugs taken with a doctor's supervision that are reversible once someone is taken off of them. And my friend Mia Mulder did a great video breaking down the science of puberty blocking drugs and why they're safe that I've linked below. Now, are they 100% perfectly safe? No, but no drug is. Like, literally watch any drug commercial and they will have a list of potential side effects, which often will sometimes include, like, death, for example. And that's why when you take puberty blockers, it's done with a doctor, and after a doctor says that it's okay for you to have them. And so it misses all of that. But that's just taking those arguments at good faith. If we just take those things at face value, it's just completely misunderstanding what it means to be trans, and just shows a general disgust and misunderstanding of what it means to be trans in the first place. But really, we all know that that's...
Oh, good night, Angela. Thank you so much for coming.
...not really what the argument is going on here. If we're being truly honest, these lawmakers and pundits are attacking trans healthcare because they're using trans people as a scapegoat to galvanize their voters or viewers with culture war bullshit to gain attention, throwing trans people under the bus in doing so. It's an incredibly cynical attention and power grab saying like, oh, think of the children's sensationalization, using trans people as the villain in order to gain attention and votes. And they do this by intentionally misinforming their audiences about trans healthcare and what it means to be trans. For example, just a singular one, they'll often conflate hormones, which do cause irreversible changes, especially in trans women who become sterile as a result of taking hormones after a few months, with things like puberty blockers, which are generally completely safe and reversible. These lawmakers and pundits will argue that hormones are being given to little children like 12-year-olds right when they ask for them, with no other doctors gatekeeping them at all, which isn't the case. It takes a lot of work to even get believed to be able to get hormones, and hormones aren't typically given until someone is 18 or at least has a therapist who says they can have it at around maybe 16 at best. Are there times where people have been given the wrong drugs early or given a surgery early or things when they weren't ready for it in which to detransition or to cause mental health problems? 100%. I am not denying that that hasn't happened. It definitely has. But statistically, those are outlier cases, and the argument for that is not to say that we shouldn't have any trans-affirming healthcare at all, but to make sure that we do trans-affirming healthcare better and have better sort of ways of understanding what to do for trans healthcare for individual people. But not only that, these lawmakers also ignore the fact that puberty blockers are given to non-trans children for things like hormone imbalances. So these lawmakers will lie about the dangers of puberty blockers and argue that trans kids shouldn't have them, but ignore that other kids take them safely, which just directly shows how these rhetorics are just being used to discriminate against trans people. Another example could be a new fake viral news story pushed by conservative news organization The Daily Wire recently showed information that the puberty blocking drug Lupron was linked to thousands of deaths, 6,370 to be precise. However, the drug is used not only for puberty blocking, but also prostate cancer, and those 6,000
prostate cancer
deaths were of cancer patients. Information that the Daily Wire intentionally left out, making it seem like it was trans kids being killed by the drug.
Sneaky, sneaky, sneaky wiki. Don't be doing that.
Further vilifying trans care. And that's just one example. These pundits and lawmakers will lie about trans people all the time, saying things like we don't understand biology, when we actually understand biology probably better than most people, especially when it relates to our own self. It's not like we're ignoring what our biology is, or that we're saying that, you know, certain aspects of a person make them inherently a woman or a man.
Oh my god. That's so dumb. Yeah, seriously, I'm a non-binary person. I'm a non-binary trans person. I know I have a vagina and tits. I'm not fucking stupid. I'm not in denial. I'm not delusional. I know what I have. Socially, I do not meet the standards of a woman. Or really a man. I'm kind of in between and more leaning to more masculine, but like, I can't tell you how much, like, in my job, my regular day job, that I get ma'amed, and sir'd. I get called sir and ma'am. Interchangeably. Like, just. People just, like, don't know what to fucking do.
We're actually saying completely the opposite. They'll also generate the stigma that we're all mentally ill, a stigma that trans medicalists help incidentally bolstering by saying that transness only stems from dysphoria, by the way. Or these lawmakers and pundits will argue that we're sexualizing and harming children in order to vilify and dehumanize trans people to their base, then causing their audience to go and attack us.
Yeah, Cassie, shut up. I'm just bragging about my dink.
And then, incidentally, vote for them and watch
my dink, my dink, my dink, my dink, my dink, my dink.
their shows. All this should be keyed in by the fact that they use terms like social contagion. That should show you the dehumanizing aspects of all of this. Those sort of phrases are often used.
Good night, Lisa. Thank you so much for coming.
Used to dehumanize people. They are trying to argue that trans people are inherently less than. It's not that these people are for affirming all trans people no matter what, because, oh, we want to be especially helpful to the non-binary trans people, and trans medicalization is awful because you don't need medicalization to be trans. It's literally just, ew, trans people are icky and disgusting, gross, and also evil, so let's deny them all that we can.
Jesus
Even
Christ.
further, we can see how many trans medicalist groups, such as SEGM, often run by cisgender men who led research in the pathologization of transgender people, such as Ray Blanchard, are often the ones who bolster this idea of transness being a social contagion, and argue for the elimination of transgender people. That's not just hyperbole, as we can see in this SEGM interview that argued for the elimination of transgender healthcare for trans youth and trans youth care in general. Not to mention that they helped create these laws that the person posting at the beginning of this video was upset about, with SEGM even helping draft the Florida anti-transgender healthcare law. So literally, trans medicalists are the ones furthering the elimination of healthcare rights for trans youth, not non-binary trans people as the earlier angry post claimed.
Right.
Even further, trans medicalists like Ray Blanchard have appeared on numerous right-wing podcasts and platforms. Trans medicalists, along with right-wing conservatives, are the ones arguing for the elimination of transgender people in general, not non-binary people.
Right.
Like, being honest with you, I really don't understand how people don't see that if something like all trans-affirming healthcare were somehow instantly outlawed tomorrow, these attacks wouldn't stop there. Not only would they try to outlaw all trans healthcare, not just for youth, but then they would continue on from that to attack us with bathroom laws in order to try to push any trans people, non-binary, binary, medicalist or not, out of public view. To say that it's not okay to be trans at all. It's all about putting people back in our boxes, to not allow us to be out and be safe as ourselves. It's trying to force us to be a certain way. And the reason for this vilification, beyond just trying to galvanize people, is that transness, both as a concept and us as people that exist, inherently push at the barriers and hierarchical structures that our society is set up with. Like, for example, there is one aspect of the trans medicalist post that I do agree with. We should be listening to transgender people of color, both binary and non-binary. Because, as writer Maria Lagunes discusses and the wonderful YouTube creator Lily Alexander explored in her own video, our very ideas of womanhood and gender norms in today's Western culture stem from colonialization's attempts to downplay black folks and specifically black women's humanity compared to the fragile, passive white woman.
Jesus Lord, that's a whole other fucking... We're gonna get into that.
Black women weren't seen as women and not even as human. Gender is a construct created not only to reinforce a binary of man above woman, but also as white people above black people. So it's important to point out that while white trans folks, like myself, do face discrimination both as women and as trans people, and we shouldn't ignore that, we are also not the primary targets of transphobia. Black trans women and non-binary folks are. But trans medicalists don't see this at all because they've centralized their experience of transness as the only valid one of it. And while some may be willing to acknowledge the discrimination faced by black folks, as this post exemplifies, they will create a barrier within their own community and gatekeep who is seen as trans or not. The truth is, we're all discriminated against and we're all allies in this fight. And quite often, non-binary people are the ones even more vilified because we're not even seen as willing to exist. Whereas some trans-medicalist people will be sort of limitedly accepted by right-wing groups because they are pushing against non-binary people and aligning again with this idea that there is a right way for a woman to be.
It's a bit desperate. It's really desperate. It really is. I think it is. It's the same thing when leftists attack other leftists. It's this trans people attacking other trans people, but they're trying to create this sense of purity. And so that's where there's some non-binary people that refer to these trans people as true scum or trans medicalists. It's like, you're against us. Like, you think I just gotta be like defined as trans and diagnosed as trans by a doctor and shit, just like you did back in the fucking 90s or whatever. It's like, non-binary people, non-binary trans people, and at least me, like, I don't see these people as my enemy. Like, trans people are not my enemy. It's the fucking cis white fucking rich elite people. It's these people that have the legislative power. Like, I'm not the one you should be mad at. I am not the one you should be mad at. And that makes me sad you're mad at me.
However, many times these trans medicalist folks will push further misinformation about trans people. Like, for example, trans man Scott Nugent recently appeared in Matt Walsh's What is a Woman documentary and spread a lot of misinformation and outright false facts about transgender surgeries and aspects of the medical community around it. Now, I know I'm making a big claim there, and I'm not going to really explore that further in this video, but I will be talking about it and getting more into the specifics of that claim in further videos. But if you want a video right now talking about a trans medicalist trans person who has spread misinformation deliberately about the trans community, I've also talked about Buck Angel doing the same in a video that I discussed earlier about him. Which brings me to my last point, because speaking of which, I do realize my own privilege within all of this. I'm a trans person who does come from a decently middle-class background, who lives in a trans-affirming area with insurance that covers most of my surgeries, and I was also able to get and afford all of them. So I do have a very deep sympathy for the anger and emotion that those who have been denied access to the care that helped save my life. It honestly pisses me off that anyone would be denied the care that literally just made me who I am and allowed me to continue living today.
Me too. I really hit a dark place when the pandemic hit. The pandemic was a time for me to really do some really deep reflection of, still recognizing that I'm at base a monad, but kind of looking into, like, who am I within this holos? Because you still have to play a part. You still have to be somebody. You can't just be like, I'm a monad, I'm a working class, I'm just like a blank fucking drone. Like, you have to be somebody. And it's not a matter of choice, it's like, it's more complicated, it's more nuanced. Nuance is the thing. So it's like, this is just who I am. And I should get to be that.
And it's that same anger that trans medicalists do feel.
And, I don't understand why it's such a big deal. Even though I do understand. That's not what I mean. Like, I do understand all the conversations and arguments. But it still doesn't add up to why such a small population of humanity is being so repressed and targeted.
Medicalists, like other trans people, are being gatekept from their own affirming care that could help change and save their lives. But because they have been so gatekept and misunderstand a trans experience, they take their anger out not at those vilifying and attacking trans rights, but those who they don't want to understand, non-binary and non-medically transitioning trans people, because they're the ones that are closest to them and they can lash out against. It's similar to what TERFs have done, being cisgender women who have sublimated their trauma and pain at living in a patriarchal society that does attack and dehumanize all women, but then place that blame on trans people. But ultimately, like how TERFs are stoking a fighting of women fighting women, just cisgender women versus trans women in this case, so too are trans medicalists just trans people fighting other trans people. It's marginalized infighting in a community that only serves to benefit those in power already. The only people that benefit from trans medicalist views that set binary and non-binary trans people against each other are those stoking those angers and resentments in the first place, the lawmakers and pundits attacking trans rights. Trans medicalists must be pushed back against because of this, and I'm not here to say that they shouldn't be. We should call out horrible people being horrible and not understanding those who are right in close proximity to them willing to educate them. But they are doing so because they themselves are misinformed and understandably angry. They're just angry at the wrong people. And as for Hunter Schafer, yes, I got back there in the end. My hope is that maybe we're misinterpreting this. Maybe she doesn't actually hold these views or has more, at least, nuanced thoughts on it than the simple ones that this post was espousing. And if not, I hope she is going to educate herself if she wishes to continue to be a trans leader that fights for everyone within her community. Yep. Because ultimately, my hope is that young trans...
If you're going to self-proclaim your, do a self-proclaiming that you're going to be a leader in a certain area, you really should do your research.
Trans folks like her who do face dysphoria, as she's been open about experiencing, aren't going to reinforce the same divisions that have hounded the trans community for so long, but reach out a hand in understanding that our community...
Paul Cherry, I don't know what you mean, but, about your question. Go ahead, though, I guess. But keep in mind, I can't really speak for... I can't speak for black trans people. Like, I can't. Like, literally, I can't. So keep in mind that.
Community is already strong, but is stronger still when we stand together, united against those who are our real enemies.
Yeah.
All right, I know that was a very long discussion. I actually did not intend this video to get as long as it did. I literally sat down being like, oh, I'll talk a little bit about Hunter Schafer, and then the script got super long. So here you're getting an extra video that I did not intend to make on a Tuesday. But that being said, this was a very straightforward video, and I'm doing that because I do actually have a much bigger and longer and much more involved video that is coming very soon. And that is part 2 of my video about Matt Walsh's What is a Woman? And the reason it's getting so long is that it's actually become something a little bit bigger than just about that film.
Oh, yeah, we should definitely do we should definitely do Jessie Gender Matt Walsh on Friday. Oh my god. I hope Jessie Gender doesn't mind. I keep reviewing her content. Like, please, if you see this, please don't. Please, we love you. Please, we love to see this. Anyways. I actually met Jessie Gender one time. Jessie Gender is a friend of a friend, and I got to meet her, and it was pretty awesome. She actually was in my home once, and I got to serve her dinner. Anyways, yeah, let's do Matt Walsh next week.
It's going to focus mostly on that film, but the film provides an inroads, like this video did, to talk about a lot of anti-transgender views. And I'm actually trying to get a lot of work done for it, talking to many experts and other people, both in the video and outside of it, around a lot of the misinformation around trans communities, especially the ones that Matt Walsh has espoused, both in his show and in the film. And also a little bit of stylistic flair as well. It's not just going to be me sitting talking to the camera like I did for this video. So please be patient with that video. And also, don't forget, I also have a video on The Boys coming up very, very soon. A couple other videos here and there that'll probably be releasing before the Matt Walsh one. But that is going to be my next big video that I'm going to be doing on this channel. And it should be coming around early to middle of September. So be on the lookout for that. But yeah, I'm excited is the wrong word considering the topic, but I'm hoping that it'll be a video that'll be very, very helpful. So if you wish to support me doing videos like that, I'm only able to do that because of folks on Patreon. Patreon helps pay my bills, so if you want to support me there, you get your name in videos, and you, again, help me support me
I'm a patron of Jessie Gender, full on.
But I do here as well as other perks as well, like being able to have like Skype calls and stuff with me. Skype. Discord? I don't know why I said Skype. That was a weird... I haven't used Skype in like years. Anyways. Beyond that, I'm also on Nebula. I also have a podcast about Babylon 5 that you can find below. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for all of that stuff. But beyond all of that, thank you so much for being here, my friends. I hope that you're all taking care of yourself, and I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper. Hello there, patrons.
Yay.
Thank you all so much for supporting me. I could not do this. I could not pay.
Anyways, so, thank you so much, everybody, for coming tonight. I hope this helps you get a little bit of grounding in the issues here surrounding non-binary people, non-binary trans people, and why they're in such hot water right now, and they don't even mean to be. We're just trying to be. We're just trying to exist. And if we're living in a world where we can't simply exist, that is an oppression. That's something that creates a need and an obsession to constantly focus on that part of our identity until it's released. And that's why we need to get to a level with humanity where they can express themselves individually, and that's not the issue. It's like we all need to focus on the teleological end. So if we keep focusing on this stuff where it's like, well, we can't let trans people express themselves because that's too weird and we don't like that, and like no medical aid or anything. It's like that's going to create stress for trans people to want to focus on that to get that release. Like, you're creating your own fucking demise with that shit. Like, you got, like, humanity doesn't need to be repressed anymore. It's systems like religion, mainstream religion, shitty secret societies and cults, rich elite, all the shit that, or Christian nationalism, shit that like influences the fucking transphobic, or feeds the transphobic legislator, legislative bullshit. I'm just stuttering now. It just makes me mad. Anyways, good night, everybody. Have a good think, and I'll see you Friday. We're gonna get into Matt Walsh. We're gonna do it. Let's do it. Let's get into Matt Walsh on Friday. Friday. Where's the goodbye music? Good night, everybody. Let's see. Good night, Claudia. Good night. Thank you so much, Mark and Cassie, for moderating tonight and keeping our chat room healthy. It seems like things are settling down, so that's good. Yeah, I figured. Perry, thank you for coming. Heretical Response, thank you so much for all your help. Claudia, you're amazing. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Lisa Grace, good to see you. Kim Drew, thank you so much. Light Remus, good to see you. Thank you for coming. Paul Cherry, always a pleasure. Athon, thank you so much for coming. Yeah, this was an epic stream. Thank you. This was a good one. This was a nice, juicy one. I'm really happy to like cover this topic, and I don't know, just give the Hyperion commentary. Who am I missing? Let's see. Thank you, Velvet Tears, for coming. Always good to see you. Thank you, Velvet. Let's see. We got Perry. We got Lisa. Lisa and Lisa. We got a couple Lisas. And we got 42 likes. Dang. That's actually pretty good for a Wednesday. 42 likes, yeah. Pretty good. Good night, Kim. Alright, good night, everybody. Good night. What's a good? What's a good? There we go. Good night, everybody. And we'll see you Friday, and we'll see you tomorrow if you're going to be at Morg's live stream. I'll be there moderating, so we'll see you there in the chat room. Yeah. All right. Good night, everybody. Good night. Oh, where's Loppy? Oh, here's Loppy. Say good night, Loppy. Good night, Loppy.